It was a room that basically screamed, library, at you. The room was twice as large as a 350 square foot room, and there were bookcases set up all over the place, going from one corner of the room to the other. Every bookcase was so tightly packed with books that it was hard to imagine how many books it truly held. Books took up a lot of space and were heavy, so it was a problem to have so many. In Subaru's case, his whole family loved to read manga, and there used to be a room on the second floor of his house that was filled to the brim with books, especially manga. One day, without any warning, the floor fell through, and it was a complete renovation disaster. Fortunately, no one was injured, and Subaru has since put them all in a dedicated book storage room, so they should never experience that kind of catastrophe again. Even from the perspective of Subaru, who has such an experience involving books, the number of books in this room exceeded the number of books in his house even with the floors removed. Of course, the structure of the mansion itself was much sturdier than that of his house. Finding even one book to read, that Subaru could understand, would be a tall order for him, considering the enormous number of books in his view. With so many books here, there must be one that I can read, right? A quick glance around the library revealed that there were no spine covers written in Japanese. There were no alphabets here as far as he knew, and most of the letters were characters based on what he'd seen on the signboards while walking around the capital. These were the commonly used characters of this world, after all. If Subaru wanted to live in this world, it was going to be essential to learn it. For him, who had even dropped his language classes in middle school, it already felt like such a drag. Subaru sighed while envisioning his coming difficulties, then, gazing at other people's bookshelves, and even sighing as you do so, so you're trying to be offensive, I suppose. Shall I respond in kind, I wonder? Subaru stiffened. He wasn't great at talking to people he'd never met before, and his brain stalled at the unexpected confrontation. His mouth opened and closed as he scrambled for a response, only to blurt out, okay, this is already going badly. Hold on, just give me a sec. With a hasty, awkward wave, he turned on his heel and stepped out of the room. Outside, he let out a breath, rubbing his temples. Okay. Reset. I got this, he muttered under his breath. Taking another breath, he re-entered the room and looked at the little girl who hadn't moved an inch from where she had been standing. Oh wow. Look who's here. Hi. Nice to meet you. Can I have a word with you? He said with an exaggerated smile that even he knew was a little too forced. Betty knew you were making fun of her, I suppose. Don't you think you deserve to be punished for entering Betty's library without an invitation, I suppose? The little girl laughed adorably and cruelly at Subaru as he tried to restart their encounter from a better position. How many times have I seen this sight in this other world? She was a beautiful, sweet girl. She appeared to be younger than felt, perhaps 11 or 12 years old. She was wearing an indigo-colored dress with lots of frills and had a lovely face that suited her ornate hairstyle and clothes. Her hair was closest to the color of cream and was grown long and rolled into curls. It looked like drills. Adorable came to mind, and the little girl's appearance seemed to be the embodiment of that word. The cuteness level was so high that one's heart couldn't help but melt if she were to smile. Now she was standing in front of Subaru with a solemn face. You'll ruin your pretty face if you don't smile. You see, just smile. Smile. Smile, Subaru said, still feeling out of his depth. Betty being pretty is simply Betty's nature, but a better question would be, what should Betty do with you, I suppose? Do what with me? Sorry, I didn't really get what you were going for. Subaru scratched the back of his head, feeling awkward. I kinda just blundered into the right answer somehow, even though I'm sure the GM would rather I go through all the events he set up. He had a habit of unintentionally making the right choice in situations where there were only a handful of hints. Some might call it lucky. Others would call it not being able to read the mood. There had been plenty of times Subaru had unknowingly ruined an event by skipping straight to the solution. The endless hallway loop was just another to add to the list. Trying to do your business in the hallway of someone else's house, getting in here without triggering the mana-sensing traps, there's only one word to describe you. The worst, in fact. Haha, yeah, I guess that does sound bad when you put it like that. Subaru averted his eyes, feeling his face heat up. But it's not like I meant to. I just, kept moving forward until I ended up here. If this were a visual novel, he probably would have skipped past all the side events without meaning to. Not because he wanted to rush things, just because he wasn't great at paying attention to what was expected of him. Shaking off that thought, Subaru turned his attention back to the little girl. Judging from what she had said, she was definitely the one responsible for the looping hallway, and the whole "no bathroom for you" ordeal was just another one of her tricks. Yet, somehow, he managed to bypass it all. I get that you want to show off, but messing with someone's basic needs like that is just cruel. I almost died of embarrassment back there. Subaru sighed, slumping his shoulders. Thinking about it makes me want to disappear. Now that she thinks about it, Betty should have let you run in circles a while longer. In fact, that would have saved Betty at least half the humiliation, I suppose. Why, you don't have to sound so smug about it. Subaru pouted, shifting anxiously from foot to foot. His earlier ordeal had left him shaken, and his pressing biological needs weren't helping his focus. The little girl sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose. Betty is growing tired of you. In fact, Roswell lets that girl do whatever she wants without consequences, and now Betty has to clean up this mess, I suppose. You're tired? But you're so young. Kids should be playing outside, soaking up the sun. Wrinkling your eyebrows all the time is just boring. Subaru threw up his hands before offering a weak thumbs up. Come on, life's strong. The phrase was something he'd picked up in the slums of the capital. He hadn't been sure how to feel about it at first, but it had started growing on him. The little girl stared at him blankly, her expression unreadable. Subaru, feeling awkward, tried to lighten the mood with a small, sheepish grin. Wait, that reaction is not what Betty expected, I suppose. You're creeping Betty out, in fact. Hey, you didn't have to say the whole phrase like that. You're making it weird. Subaru huffed before quickly shaking his head. Hey, anyway, can we just get to the point? If we drag this out too long, I'm gonna be in trouble. I don't understand what the second half of that means, but Betty has a feeling we should move on for Betty's sake, I suppose. Okie dokie. So, Subaru stopped himself before blurting out the question weighing on his mind. If he asked where the bathroom was, she'd probably use that to torture him further. No, best to stay focused. No matter how he looked at it, this girl was definitely a magic user. The looping hallway alone was proof enough. And if she could do that so easily, Subaru had no chance of opposing her. Besides, he was in no condition to fight. He was still recovering from life-threatening injuries, he was exhausted, and he was starving. After all the running earlier, his body felt weak, and the blood loss certainly wasn't helping. Ugh, I need food. Something with iron, liver. A heaping serving of pork liver with garlic chives would do the trick. Right now, I'm the one who's bloodthirsty. This boy, what are you even talking about now, I suppose? Oh, never mind that. Let's just move on. Subaru quickly straightened up, clearing his throat. So, what is this place? It seemed wise to get information while the girl was still willing to talk. He needed to confirm where he was, at the very least. While he didn't think Elsa had captured him, he couldn't be sure. But the girl simply replied, "It's Betty's bedroom, I suppose." Oh, well, that's direct. Subaru blinked. I know kids these days think being blunt is cool and all, but isn't it a little too literal? His weak attempt at humor didn't seem to land. The little girl, Betty, puffed out her cheeks, clearly unimpressed. She crossed her arms, giving a small huff as she stepped toward him. Betty has had enough, I suppose. Betty has a feeling she's going to have to teach you a lesson, in fact. Oh, come on. Abusing prisoners is barbaric. Don't do it. I'm just a normal guy who has to endure the urge to pee, and that makes me less dangerous than the average person. That makes you more dangerous due to your desperation, in fact. Damn, that's clever. Crap, I can't think of a single thing to do to prove that I'm not a bad guy. Listen, I am not a bad guy. She shook her head in small increments, her determined gaze unwavering. Her eyes moistened as she shrank into herself, yet her steps didn't slow. Instead, they grew faster. And then she said, "Don't you dare move, in fact." A shiver ran down Subaru's spine at those words. The scent of old paper, which had dominated the library, vanished in an instant. The shift was unnatural. The stabbing coldness plunged into his nose, and then came the high-pitched ringing in his ears. His skin paled, his limbs stiffened. His senses were being altered. That much was obvious. His ability to smell had been stripped away, likely to heighten his sight and touch. A realization that did nothing to soothe the gnawing dread in his chest. The little girl in front of him was already within reach. She barely stood as tall as his chest, her shallow blue eyes gazing up at him. Her pale pink lips curled into a smile, soft, innocent. But that innocence only made Subaru's alarm grow louder. "Do you have something to say, I wonder?" she asked, tilting her head, her voice sweet yet unsettling. Sweat trickled down Subaru's forehead. He felt so small, so weak, so powerless. But that was nothing new, was it? He always felt that way. He just pretended he didn't. He needed to say something. Anything. But what could he say? What could possibly turn this around? Maybe something casual. Something dumb. Something to make it seem like he wasn't actually panicking inside. Is it gonna hurt? Betty is impressed you can be so light-hearted in this situation, I suppose. Betty guesses it's up to you whether it hurts or not, in fact. Her small hand pressed against his chest. A chill ran up his spine, his breath hitching. Brr. Then came the fire. A sensation unlike anything he had ever felt before tore through him, spreading from his chest to his fingertips, up to the roots of his hair. His whole body felt like it was being incinerated from the inside out. His vision blurred, and before he knew it, he was on his knees. His breath came in ragged gasps, his body trembling. His muscles ached, his head throbbed. Everything hurt. But worse than the pain was the emptiness. He felt drained, hollow, like something vital had been yanked from his core. It looks like you didn't pass out, I suppose. Just like Betty was told, you're quite sturdy, in fact. What the hell did you do to me? Drill lowly. Betty simply took out some of the mana inside your body, I suppose. It seems to have a special shape, in fact, even though you're just an ordinary guy. Your gate also seems to be closed, in fact. Her words barely registered. Subaru barely had the strength to lift his head, let alone comprehend what she was saying. He tried to move, to push himself up, but she poked him, and his arms collapsed beneath him. Well, it confirms that you aren't hostile, I suppose, and for all the disrespect towards Betty and the hard work Betty has done, taking your mana should be suitable payment, I suppose. Another poke. Another thud as his body hit the floor. This is the third time I've kissed the ground in a face-down position. Actually, no, this isn't even the first time. Since our return by death, this is totally my first kiss. Summoning what little strength he had left, he shifted his head, forcing himself to look at the little girl. She watched him struggle with mild amusement. Why was she looking at him like that? Did she think this was funny? That he was just some plaything? It made him feel small again. Like he always did. Why was he like this? Why did he have to be so weak? Forcing out a weak laugh, he bared his teeth. You're not human, are you? And I don't just mean your personality. For all the times you've seen Bubby, you're a little slow on the uptake, I suppose. Her words were light, almost mocking. She was toying with him. Like a child pulling the wings off an insect just to see what would happen. One correction, Subaru muttered. In terms of personality, you're not even human either. Don't measure a noble and sublime being by your standards, human. Her tone was cruel. Unnaturally so. Something twisted in Subaru's gut. Anger? Frustration? He wasn't sure. But whatever it was, he had no energy left to do anything about it. The darkness was creeping in. Come on. I just woke up, and I'm being rendered unconscious again. I will speak to the others, I suppose. It would be troublesome if you started leaking here, I suppose. What if I just let it all out now? No, I don't have enough guts to say that. His mouth refused to work, his vision blurred, and then, finally, he lost consciousness. Come on. I just woke up, and now I'm getting knocked out again. I shall inform the others. It would be rather troublesome if you started leaking here, I suppose. What if I just let it all out now? No, I don't have the guts to say that. Unable to fight against the pull of unconsciousness, Subaru's thoughts scattered, and his world faded to black once more. Oh, he is awake, sister. Ah, he is awake, Rem. It felt as though his consciousness was rising to the surface from the depths of an ocean, sluggish and heavy. The first thing that registered was the sound of two voices, soft, similar, and unmistakably belonging to the same person. Judging by how well rested he felt, he was probably lying in the same comfortable bed as before. The moment Subaru's eyelids fluttered open, they were greeted by the gentle glow of sunlight filtering through the curtains. The brightness was mild, the kind that suggested early morning. No clock in sight. No problem. That's where my patented stubble clock comes in handy. Subaru pitched the idea to no one in particular, his mind still shaking off the haze of sleep. Rubbing his chin, he gauged the length of his stubble. Judging by the feel, it had been about 4 or 5 hours since he was last awake. His body still carried a faint heaviness, but at least he wasn't completely drained. It is 7 Brightson now, sir. It is almost 7 Brightson, sir. Perhaps noticing his gaze drifting toward the window, the twin voices kindly supplied the time. 7 Brightson. Whatever that meant. Subaru had no clue how this world measured time, but based on the wording, he assumed it was around 7 in the morning. Then again, he wasn't even sure if this world used a 24-hour system. So if I don't count the first time I woke up, that means I basically slept through the entire day, huh? Not that I'm surprised. I have pulled a solid 52-hour sleep before. Sister, did you hear that? A truly lazy man's boast. Yes, I heard, Rem. Truly the words of a good-for-nothing. So, tell me, who are the two lovely ladies constantly stereotyping me? Subaru stretched his arms with a smirk, his voice dripping with self-satisfaction. Wait a second. His voice, it was deep, commanding. It rumbled like distant thunder, filled with weight and power. Subaru blinked, running a hand down his throat before looking around the room. His movements felt fluid, his body somehow lighter yet stronger at the same time. Did I get taller? His gaze dropped to his torso, where once had been the soft, unimpressive body of a shut-in now rested something sculpted and defined. Where did these abs come from? Fascinated, he ran a hand over his stomach, feeling the rigid contours. He flexed experimentally. Was that muscle definition? Even though he had merely sat upright, the sheer presence of him sent a ripple through the room. The two maids, standing beside the bed, tensed immediately. Their fingers gripped each other tighter as they instinctively took a step back. Their expressions, ones that had once been playful and teasing, were now cautious, wary. They had expected him to wake up, sure, but not like this. At 5 feet tall, the twins weren't small, but next to Subaru, who now radiated an undeniable aura, they seemed smaller than before. They were identical, save for their differing hair colors, one pink, one light blue, and the way their bangs covered opposite eyes. But none of that mattered to Subaru. No, something far more profound occupied his mind. His gaze locked onto the two of them, taking in the crisp black apron dresses, the delicate white frilly headpieces. A hush fell over the room. Then, Subaru took a slow, deep breath. No way, there are maid outfits in this world. His voice was filled with reverence. Or, his declaration carried such overwhelming force that it made the air shift. The twins stiffened. This is beyond perfection, Subaru muttered, rising from the bed in a slow, calculated movement. He rolled his shoulders, enjoying the unfamiliar sensation of absolute control over his body. His hand moved to his chin, stroking the stubble like a philosopher deep in thought. Truly, I am blessed. To wake up and be greeted by such sights, if there were ever a time to believe in divine providence, this would be it. The twins' eyes widened slightly at the sheer audacity radiating from him. Oh no, I'm currently being indecently humiliated in our guest's head, sister. Oh no, I'm being violated right now in the head of our guest, Rem. But unlike before, there was no teasing in their tones, only a strange mix of unease and fascination. Subaru, in turn, gave them a look. You underestimate the boundless grandeur of my imagination, he said smoothly, lifting his arms and curling his fingers as if grasping the very fabric of reality itself. The twins shivered, and then, they did something different. Instead of throwing each other under the bus as they had before, they hesitated. Their usual banter didn't come. Instead, they exchanged glances, their hands gripping tighter. Rem, I believe we should be cautious. Yes, sister. I have a feeling he may be dangerous. Subaru chuckled, a deep, knowing sound. Oh, my dear maids. You should be cautious. He took a single step forward, and it felt like the entire room reacted to the motion. The twins flinched. Then, without another word, they turned and ran. Wise decision, Subaru mused as he watched them flee. Then, smirking, he immediately dashed after them. The room transformed into a battleground of agility, the three of them weaving, dodging, and cutting corners in a chaotic dance of pursuit. And then, knock, knock. The door cracked open. Couldn't you have woken up more quietly? Subaru halted, turning toward the doorway with slow, deliberate grace. And there she was. Long, silver hair, flowing freely in the morning light. Instead of her usual robe, she wore something different. Something darker, more refined. The skirt stopped just above her knees, revealing slender legs that were partially hidden by knee-high socks. The corners of Subaru's lips curled upward. Well, His voice came out rich, smooth. Whoever selected this attire, I commend your artistic genius. Amelia frowned, tilting her head. I have no idea what you're talking about, but somehow, I already know it's something pointless. Before she could say anything more, Subaru placed a hand on his chest, closed his eyes, and he let out a quiet, satisfied chuckle. Then, ever so slightly, he lifted his chin. Amelia blinked. For some reason, she felt an odd shift in the air. Why do you look so proud of yourself? Subaru opened his eyes, the golden glow of the morning sun reflecting off them. Because, my dear Amelia, he turned to face her fully, his presence filling the space. Right now, I should be. Amelia stared at him for a long moment. Then, finally, she sighed. I already regret checking on you. Subaru felt his heart skip a beat at Amelia's sudden appearance. Sure, the outfit was a pleasant surprise, unexpectedly perfect, even, but what really made his chest tighten was her presence. But unlike before, when he would have melted into an awkward mess, Subaru simply smirked. Something about the daylight, the warmth on his skin, the energy coursing through his body, it made him feel invincible. No hesitation, no second guessing. TCH. I should have known my radiance would summon a goddess, he said, stretching his arms lazily. You come to bask in my presence, Amelia Tan. I don't blame you. Amelia blinked. She opened her mouth, closed it, then furrowed her brows. Okay, what? What's the problem? Did I leave you speechless? That's normal, don't worry. Subaru grinned, rolling his shoulders. I do have that effect on people. Amelia stared at him for a moment, her violet eyes scanning him carefully. You seem different. Oh, noticed already? Subaru flexed his fingers, cracking his knuckles with a satisfying pop. Yeah, I feel incredible. Taller, stronger, smoother, like I woke up and decided to conquer the world before breakfast. He glanced at his hand, clenching and unclenching his fist. Not gonna lie, I might just wrestle a dragon today for fun. Right? Amelia said slowly, eyeing him with suspicion. Hold up. Subaru suddenly stepped closer, his sharp gaze locking onto her. Amelia stiffened slightly at the unexpected movement. You're staring a lot, Amelia Tan, he mused. Flattered, really. But if you keep looking at me like that, I might start thinking you've fallen for me. Amelia's face twitched. What? No, I was just, that's not. Relax, relax, Subaru chuckled, waving her off. I'm just saying, if you're that impressed, you could just say so. I won't judge. Amelia groaned, rubbing her temple. Ugh, I was worried about you, but I can see that was a mistake. Oh, concerned about me? You're full of surprises today, huh? Subaru crossed his arms, tilting his head with a smirk. What, scared I was gonna waste away without your attention? Amelia took a deep breath. I heard Beatrice might have played a prank on you while you were weak from blood loss. I came to check on you. That's all. Subaru scoffed. Might have. Oh, no, she definitely did something. That little menace tried to put me in a coma. Well, I did tell her to go easy on you, Amelia offered. Subaru gave her a deadpan look. Yeah? Well, you might want to work on your diplomacy skills, 'cause she took that as a suggestion instead of an order. Amelia sighed. Then, something seemed to click in her head. She folded her arms, giving him a skeptical look. Wait a second. How do I know you're actually Subaru? He blinked. Huh? You're acting completely different from earlier. And you look different too. She motioned vaguely at him. Taller, broader, and your voice sounds weirdly deep. How do I know you didn't get replaced by an imposter while you were unconscious? Subaru let out a low chuckle, stepping closer again. Amelia instinctively took a step back. Oh, now you're wary? He leaned slightly toward her, his golden eyes gleaming. That's cute, Amelia Tan. But if you really want proof, he suddenly grabbed her hand, lifting it effortlessly. You're welcome to check for yourself. Amelia froze. Her gaze flickered between their hands, the effortless way he held hers. like it weighed nothing. Her fingertips brushed against the firm muscle of his palm, and her face turned a shade lighter. "Oh, okay. What is happening right now?" she muttered under her breath. Subaru grinned. "Real enough for you?" Amelia yanked her hand away, glaring at him. Who do you think you are? Right now?" Subaru spread his arms dramatically. "A man reborn. The sun's champion. Your future husband." "Stop right there." Subaru burst into laughter, reveling in the sheer chaos of her reaction. Amelia groaned, dragging a hand down her face. "Ugh, I liked you better when you were normal." "TCH. No taste," Subaru said, shaking his head. Amelia crossed her arms, glaring at him. "You are going to go back to normal, right?" Who knows?" Subaru turned away, smirking. "Maybe I'll stay like this. Maybe you'll fall for me like this. Guess we'll find out." Amelia clenched her jaw. "I already regret coming here." Subaru simply chuckled, basking in his own magnificence. Putting aside Subaru's rather flamboyant behavior, the twins, who had been quietly observing, rushed to Amelia's side the moment she entered the room. Like a pair of synchronized shadows, they positioned themselves behind her, only their faces peeking out from either side of her shoulders. "Kindly listen, Lady Amelia," Ram began smoothly. "The guest has humiliated my sister." "Kindly listen, Lady Amelia," Rem followed, voice dripping with false distress. "The guest has held me captive and violated Rem." Subaru scoffed, standing tall as he crossed his arms. His smirk practically radiated arrogance. "Ha! As if you two could ever hold me accountable. The truth is simple. I am just too overwhelming. My very presence leaves maidens breathless. My charm, my magnificence. It's simply too much for your fragile sensibilities to handle." The twins blinked. Then, without missing a beat, "Yes, Lady Amelia," Ram said dryly. "My sister is sorry for what she's done." "Yes, Lady Amelia," Rem echoed. "I'm sure Rem will reflect on this." After properly admiring his own magnificence, and suffering through the twins' utter lack of appreciation for it, Subaru finally shifted his attention back to Amelia. She, in turn, was staring at him with a mix of skepticism and reluctant patience. It was the kind of look one might give a particularly excitable dog. All right, Subaru said, stretching his arms dramatically. "We've established that I am, objectively, a walking miracle. But let's not get stuck on that. Amelia Tan, what brings you to my humble domain?" Amelia crossed her arms. "Humble?" Subaru gestured grandly at the lavishly furnished room, the expensive decor, and the soft, pristine bed he had just been resting in. "Well, it's not mine. But it's where I lay my head, and by that logic, it is my kingdom. Temporary as it may be." Ram sighed. "If it is a kingdom, then it is one of fools." "See? She gets it." Subaru grinned. "Anyway, Amelia Tan, spill. Did you miss me so badly you just had to come see me?" Amelia gave him a flat stare. "I came to check if you were feeling okay." Subaru gasped, pressing a hand over his heart. "You do care about me. I knew it." Amelia's brows furrowed. "You almost died yesterday. And yet, here I stand, stronger than ever." He flexed slightly for emphasis. "I was going to say that it would have been concerning if you weren't okay." Subaru smirked. "And yet, you still came personally. Admit it, Amelia Tan, you were worried." Amelia hesitated for just a moment before sighing. "Of course, I was. You collapsed in front of me." For once, Subaru actually paused. There was no sarcasm in her tone. No deflections, no jokes. Just a simple, honest truth. "Well," he said, rubbing his nose slightly, "I guess I can't make fun of you if you're gonna be that sincere about it." Amelia blinked in mild surprise. "Oh, that's surprisingly mature of you." Subaru immediately straightened up, smirk returning full force. "I contain multitudes." "Never mind." Amelia turned away, already regretting giving him even a second of praise. Before the conversation could derail further, Rem spoke up. "Lady Amelia, I believe Lord Roswall would like to speak with him soon. This Roswall guy, he finally said, crossing his arms, is he some big deal or something? The room fell into silence. Ram's eye twitched. Rem's smile became just a little too polite. Amelia, sensing danger, closed her eyes and sighed. Excuse me? Ram's voice was smooth but ice-cold. Oh. Subaru raised an eyebrow. Did I say something wrong? What, is this Roswall dude royalty or something? Should I be groveling already? Rem, still smiling, tilted her head. Lord Roswall is the most powerful noble in Lugnitza, the owner of this estate, and the one who has graciously allowed you to recover here. Yeah, great guy, I'm sure. Subaru waved a hand dismissively. But what's he actually do? Just sit around being fancy, count coins, twirl his mustache. Both maids stiffened at the blatant disrespect. Ram stepped forward, arms crossed. Lord Roswall is this kingdom's court mage. He is a man of unparalleled wisdom and magical prowess. Rem followed suit. His very existence commands respect, yet you speak of him so carelessly, as if he was some common noble. Oh, my bad. Subaru placed a hand on his chest, bowing slightly in mock regret. Didn't realize I had to worship the guy just because he owns a fancy house. Ram's eyebrow twitched. Subaru, Amelia interjected with a weary sigh. I know you have this thing about being obnoxious, but could you not insult the person who's helping you? Subaru scoffed. I'm just saying, if this Roswall dude is so important, he should have been the one to greet me. After all, I'm the most interesting thing to happen to this mansion since, well, ever. A heavy silence fell over the room. Ram and Rem exchanged a glance. Lady Amelia. Ram's voice was neutral, too neutral. Shall we take responsibility for disciplining this guest? Rem clasped her hands together. I believe some correction is in order. Subaru raised his hands. Whoa. Is this how you treat all your guests? Shouldn't I be getting a welcome feast instead of a beating? Ram smiled, but there was no warmth in it. A beating is a welcome, for those who deserve it. Rem mirrored her sister's expression. Shall we take him outside, sister? Subaru's smirk faltered slightly. Okay, hold on now. No need to get violent. I'm just saying, if this Roswall guy is as amazing as you claim, then why hasn't he come to see me yet? He shrugged. I mean, I'm a very important guest, after all. Ram narrowed her eyes. And what exactly makes you think you are important? Subaru grinned, tapping his temple. Because I am me. And that, dear Ram, is enough. Rem exhaled slowly, as if physically restraining herself from violence. Amelia massaged her temples. Subaru, please. Can you not antagonize the people who actually work here? Subaru pouted. I prefer the term established dominance. I prefer the term stop before they kill you. Ram let out a long sigh, shaking her head. A fool with an inflated ego. How tiring. Rem smiled sweetly. Sister, if he continues speaking like this, I fear we will have to remove his tongue for the sake of Lord Roswall's dignity. Subaru gulped. You're joking, right? Neither maid answered. Right. Amelia turned toward the door. Enough of this. Let's just go. Roswall's waiting. Subaru, sensing that further taunts might actually get him murdered by the maids, wisely decided to follow without another word. But even as they walked, his smirk remained. Let them be mad. Let them be irritated. After all, what was the point of all this strength if he wasn't the center of attention? And if Roswall truly was as great as they claimed, then Subaru would just have to see it for himself. And judge him accordingly.
As Subaru turned to follow Amelia, he barely had time to register the doorframe before. Crack! A sharp, resounding thud rang through the grand corridor as his forehead collided with the solid, unyielding wood. Pain exploded across his skull, a searing bolt of white-hot agony that surged through his nerves. His vision burst into a sea of blinding light, the world tilting violently beneath him as if the very ground had turned traitor. A shrill, grating ring filled his ears, drowning out everything else. He reeled backward, instinctively clutching his forehead, his fingers pressing into the quickly swelling point of impact. The smooth lacquered wood had been utterly unmoved by his suffering, standing firm and impassive as if mocking his carelessness. His other hand flailed in the air before grasping the nearest support, the cool, stone wall at his side. A sharp, pained breath hissed through his clenched teeth. "Ha, by the gods, what manner of treacherous sorcery is this?" The doorframe, resolute in its silence, remained indifferent. The moment stretched, long enough for Subaru's dazed senses to register more than just his own suffering. The scent of the plush carpet beneath him, thick with the faint fragrance of lavender and something earthier, perhaps sandalwood, mingled with the subtle aroma of polished oak and the lingering traces of candle wax. The golden light streaming in through the arched windows cast long, dappled patterns across the floor, catching the dust motes suspended in the still air. Even in his pain, he could feel the warmth where the sun's rays kissed the rich wooden panels, the contrast stark against the cool shadows lingering beneath the chandeliers above. Then, there was the sound, or rather, the attempt at not making a sound. A breath, sharp and restrained, the whisper of fabric shifting, the faintest tremor of amusement, barely swallowed down. His vision still blurred, Subaru turned, squinting past the ache in his skull. And there they were. Ram stood composed, arms crossed, the very picture of poised indifference, save for the telltale twitch at the corner of her lips. Her crimson eye gleamed, her amusement barely contained behind a carefully crafted mask of neutrality. Rem, ever the model of grace, had folded her hands neatly before her, her expression as serene as a painting. Yet, despite her best efforts, there it was, the faintest crinkle at the edges of her eyes, the gentle quiver of her lips betraying the mirth that threatened to spill forth. And then there was Amelia, the greatest traitor of them all. The half-elf had turned away entirely, delicate shoulders trembling, her silver hair quivering as she pressed a hand to her mouth in a futile attempt to smother her laughter. The sunlight that poured through the high windows bathed her in a halo of gold, making her look positively angelic, if angels were the type to take amusement in the suffering of others. Subaru's fingers curled into a fist. His pride, already wounded, now lay thoroughly battered beneath the crushing weight of their silent mirth. "Are you amused?" His voice, sharp and laced with injured dignity, sliced through the air like a blade unsheathed. Ram exhaled, a single sharp breath through her nose. Perish the thought, dear guest. Rem inclined her head, blue eyes shimmering with carefully measured politeness. "We would never dare find amusement in your misfortune, dear guest." "Never," Ram echoed, her voice a little too smooth, her amusement no longer concealed. Subaru's scowl deepened, his throbbing forehead doing little to restore his battered dignity. The mansion itself, bathed in soft golden light, seemed to revel in his suffering. Even the air smelled richer, like ancient books and fine tea, as if the very atmosphere had conspired to remind him that this place was above him. Amelia made a sound, one that was distinctly not a cough but could not quite be called anything else. It was soft, barely there, yet to Subaru's ears, it may as well have been a triumphant fanfare at his expense. He exhaled slowly through his nose, drawing in the air of the mansion, the subtle trace of lavender woven into the fabric of the curtains, the lingering warmth of the afternoon sun as it filtered through tall, arched windows. There was a faint spice of polished mahogany beneath it all, mingling with the scent of aged books and candle wax, a quiet reminder of the grandeur that pressed in from every side. With what little dignity remained to him, as much as a man who had just headbutted a doorframe could possibly muster, Subaru straightened. The dull ache at his forehead pulsed in time with his wounded pride, but he ignored both. Instead, he lifted his chin, exuding the composure of a man who had not just been betrayed by architecture. With deliberate ceremony, he ducked, properly, this time, and stepped through the treacherous doorway, his boots sinking into the thick carpet beyond. It was rich beneath his soles, the fibers plush, yet dense enough to carry the weight of generations. There was a warmth to it, a muted softness that drank in the light, the golden glow of the sun stretching across its embroidered surface like liquid amber. And then, as he moved further into the hallway, the sheer scale of it unfolded around him. The ceilings soared impossibly high, their beams carved with intricate patterns, gilded edges catching the sunlight and casting delicate, shimmering shadows upon the walls. The scent of lacquered wood grew stronger here, mingling with something older. The quiet presence of time itself settled into every polished surface. Yet, for reasons entirely beyond mortal comprehension, the chandeliers loomed at a height that was neither practical nor entirely safe. His gaze trailed upward, following the way the delicate crystals refracted the sunlight, scattering fragmented rainbows across the floor. But then his eyes drifted downward, toward them. The realization struck him like a second blow to the head. This house was built for small people. Amelia, gliding ahead, barely reached his waist. The twin maids, even shorter. This entire estate, this grand, opulent mansion of supposed prestige and renown, was nothing more than an elaborate death trap for any man who stood with even an ounce of greatness. His fingers brushed against his still throbbing forehead. No wonder they walked these halls with such ease. The treacherous beams and dangerously low chandeliers posed no threat to them. They are unburdened by the trials of stature. And he alone, must bear the weight of the sun's blessing. A slow smirk curled across his lips, wry amusement flickering in his gaze. Something amuses you, dear guest. Ram's voice cut through the quiet, smooth and sharp as a blade wrapped in silk. Subaru turned to her, his smirk widening as he met her stare with an easy, practiced confidence. The light caught her crimson eye, but she did not blink, watching him with that same poised, knowing air. Oh, nothing at all, he mused, slipping his hands into the pockets of his jacket as though he had not just suffered an indignity. Only pondering how the world itself seems determined to test me. It is, after all, the burden of those who stand above to suffer the inconveniences of the small. Rem's polite smile did not waver, though her fingers curled just a fraction tighter around the hem of her apron. How fortunate, then, she said, voice ever so sweet, that you, dear guest, are so accustomed to suffering. Subaru chuckled, low and amused. A most gracious observation, dear Rem. Amelia groaned. Subaru, please. Can we not do this every 5 seconds? He placed a hand over his chest, mock offense painted across his face. Dearest Lady Amelia, you wound me. I do nothing but exist, and yet even that is too much. You antagonize them constantly, she deadpanned. I prefer the term, established dominance. I prefer the term, stop before they kill you. Ram exhaled through her nose, shaking her head. A fool with an ego inflated beyond reason. How tiring. Rem smiled, though the warmth never quite reached her eyes. Sister, should he continue to speak in such a manner, I fear we will be forced to remove his tongue for the sake of Lord Roswall's dignity. Subaru sighed, gaze shifting to the sunlight-drenched hallway ahead, where dust motes swirled in golden beams, their movement slow and deliberate, as if time itself were unhurried here. A house too small for him. A world too eager to humble him. And 3 women too quick to remind him of both. Truly, suffering was his constant companion. Subaru faltered. You're joking, right? Neither maid answered. Right? Silence stretched between them, thick as the polished wood beneath his feet. The scent of varnish lingered in the air, warm and faintly sharp, mixing with the sun-warmed fabric of the drapes swaying gently along the corridor. The gold embroidery caught the light, gleaming against the deep reds and midnight blues of the walls, a quiet testament to wealth and age. Amelia sighed, already turning toward the heavy doors at the end of the hall. The sound of her footsteps barely disturbed the plush carpet, soft and thick enough to swallow the weight of her movement. Enough of this. Let's go. Roswall's waiting. Subaru, sensing that perhaps, he had overindulged his wit for one evening, wisely chose to follow without another word. The fibers of the carpet pressed against his soles, grounding him, the warmth of the sun spilling across it like molten gold. There was a quiet hum in the air, the kind that lived in old places, where time settled into the wood and whispered through the halls. And yet, even as they walked, his smirk remained. Let them be irritated. Let them be frustrated. It mattered little. Because at the end of the day, it was his name that filled this house with sound. His voice that stirred the still air, unsettling the dust motes that danced lazily in the sunbeams. His presence that left ripples in the silence, pressing against the aged walls and echoing in the space between footsteps. And if this Roswall was truly the towering pillar of power they claimed him to be, then Subaru would see it with his own eyes, and judge him accordingly. As they continued down the hall, Subaru found himself adjusting his stride, navigating the treacherous floorboards beneath his feet. The old wood groaned with every step, its voice deep and resonant, as if complaining about the presence of someone so unaccustomed to its quirks. Unlike the sisters ahead, who moved with practiced ease, their steps featherlight, he bore the full brunt of the mansion's aged temperament. The silence between them was not total. Though Amelia and the maids did not speak, there was a distinct sound that lingered in the air, stifled giggles. Subaru narrowed his eyes, his pride bristling. Is there something funny? he asked, tone laced with feigned innocence. No, Ram replied smoothly, her voice as effortless as a knife sliding into its sheath. Nothing at all. Rem, ever the picture of politeness, followed her sister's words with a gentle smile. Though, dear guest, it is rather impressive how thoroughly you announce your presence with every step. I do believe the entire estate is now aware of your arrival. Subaru scoffed, tilting his chin upward as if to reclaim some of his lost dignity. TCH. Is it a crime to walk with the authority of a man destined for greatness? Amelia, walking slightly ahead, sighed in exasperation. Subaru, you tripped 3 times in the last hallway. If that's authority, then maybe you should try being a little less authoritative. I was conducting structural integrity tests, Subaru countered, adjusting his jacket with an air of self-importance. It is my solemn duty as a guest to ensure that these halls do not collapse under the weight of true magnificence. Ram exhaled sharply, the ghost of a smirk tugging at her lips. Oh, how foolish of us not to realize. Truly, the mansion is honored to be graced by such magnificence. Rem tilted her head, a polite curiosity in her gaze. Dear guest, if the mansion does collapse under your magnificence, would that not imply a tragic lack of structural competence on your part? Subaru faltered, his mouth opening, then closing, his brain scrambled for a counterattack. Amelia chuckled softly, covering her mouth with her fingers. You walked right into that one. I let her have that one, Subaru declared, crossing his arms. Because, as a gentleman, I believe in the importance of charity. Ram hummed, a rare quality in a fool. As they finally reached the dining room, Amelia stepped in first, followed by the maids, who glided through with ease. Subaru, however, faced yet another challenge. The doorway. He slowed his pace, eyeing the archway as if it were an adversary. With exaggerated caution, he ducked properly this time, stepping through with an over-practiced grace. The moment he straightened, finding himself unburdened by architectural sabotage, he let out a victorious sigh. Ah, at last, a room befitting my stature. He spread his arms, taking in the grand space. No obstacles, no threats, just a fine dining room where a man can breathe. As Subaru straightened, victorious in his battle against the doorway, he took a moment to fully absorb the dining room's grandeur. The walls were lined with intricate wood paneling, dark and rich, exuding an air of refinement that almost felt too dignified for him to exist within. A massive chandelier hung overhead, casting a golden glow across the long, polished table. The air smelled faintly of aged wood, the fabric of the drapes, and something warm, spiced, indulgent, the unmistakable scent of a meal waiting to be served. But what truly caught his attention wasn't the lavish decor. It was him, seated at the very end of the absurdly long dining table, lounging with an ease that spoke of complete ownership of the space, was Roswell L. Mathers. The man was a sight, clad in an ostentatious, mismatched ensemble of deep purples and blues, his face painted in a way that was both theatrical and unsettling. His mismatched eyes gleamed with something unreadable, his chin resting against his palm as he observed their entrance with the air of a cat watching a particularly amusing mouse. Subaru came to a halt, gaze locking onto Roswell's. For a brief second, he simply stared. Then, lips curling upward, he let out a soft, almost disbelieving chuckle. So, that's the guy, huh? He murmured, half to himself. Ram, already moving to take her place at the side of the room, glanced at him. Did you expect someone else? Subaru shrugged, stepping further into the room. Honestly, I was picturing something a little less circus ringmaster and a little more noble overlord. A low, rolling laugh filled the space. Ooh, howda, Leite, full, Roswell drawled, his voice lilting with an unnatural rhythm, stretching and bending syllables like he was playing with them. I see our guest is a man of bold first impressions. Subaru smirked, slipping his hands into his pockets as he made his way to his seat. What can I say? It's a talent. Amelia, already seated, gave Subaru a pointed look. Please don't start something before dinner. Who, me? Subaru pressed a hand to his chest in mock offense. I would never. Ram let out a quiet sigh, as if already resigning herself to the fact that the next hour would be filled with nothing but foolishness. Rem, meanwhile, simply smiled, polite, practiced, betraying nothing. Roswell, for his part, remained lounging in his chair, his unreadable gaze locked onto Subaru. Well then, he mused, lips twitching upward. Shall we begin?